son of Barbara Beach Hamburg, who was murdered on March 3rd, 2010. So, her son, Madison Hamburg, decided to make a documentary for a senior project at SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, about the death of his mother. And initially, he had wanted this documentary to be about preserving her memory and learning more about her, because he felt that he didn't know a lot about her because he was only 18 years old when she was murdered. And after she was murdered, he started using opiates. He was able to get clean in 2013, about 3 years after her murder. But he came out of that addiction, just wanting to know more about her and wanting to know more about the circumstances surrounding her murder. He wasn't able to finish it before his senior year ended, but he got an A on it, and his professor told him to keep working on it, and that's what he did, until he eventually got a deal with HBO. He spent 8 years speaking to various family members and kind of unraveling secrets about his mother and his family that he didn't know prior to doing this documentary. The series really sticks out to me because very few, if any, true crime documentaries or shows or content is done by a member of the actual family. I know there are a handful, I can't think of them off the top of my head, but it's kind of genre bending. And it just adds a really fresh take on, I don't want to say fresh take because that sounds like a buzzword, but it adds a different point of view that you don't normally get to see in investigative journalism and investigative reporting. This is a cold case, and the docuseries just really shows how a crime like this can tear a family apart, and how everyone really grieves in their own way. So I would really suggest that you watch this documentary. I will go over some details of the case, but I still think that it's worth a watch because I can't portray all the nuances and images that, or tell the story the way that her son can tell the story. So, on March 3rd, 2010, Barbara Hamburg was found murdered outside of her home in Madison, Connecticut. It gets a little bit confusing because Madison is the name of the town where she was murdered, and Madison is also the name of her son who did the documentary. Her body was discovered by her daughter, Allie, and her sister, Conway. Allie had wanted to come home early from school, but was unable to get hold of her mother, so she called her aunt, Conway, and Conway was Barbara's sister. Conway picked Allie up, and they went home, but they couldn't find Barbara anywhere. Allie noticed that her mother's purse was kind of strewn across the floor, and that there was like a little statue of the dog outside of the porch that was knocked over, so it seemed like there had been some kind of scuffle. Conway was the one who ended up finding her sister underneath some patio furniture cushions. At first she thought maybe it was like a dead animal, but as she pulled back the cushions, she realized it was her sister. she was stabbed and beaten to death. Almost immediately, Jeffrey Hamburg, Barbara's ex-husband, became a suspect. The two of them were going through a divorce, and the day that she was found dead was the day that she was supposed to be in court to discuss Jeffrey's claim that he could not afford his child support and alimony payments, despite the fact that he was living a lavish lifestyle and at one point was a multimillionaire. He allegedly owed $153,000 to Barbara and $324,000 to his kids. Barbara was ready that day to find him in contempt of the court orders if he didn't have the money, and to put him in jail, of course, with the help of her lawyer. But she never showed up to court. Also, after the murder, after her body was found, it was very difficult to get a hold of Jeffrey. He wasn't being forthcoming with the police. He wasn't being cooperative, and you find in the docuseries that he is also not cooperative with his own son. Eventually, he did end up giving the police his DNA, and years later, in a secretly recorded conversation between Madison and the police department, the investigators say that they found DNA underneath her fingernails that was of Hamburg male lineage. So they're unable to rule Jeffrey out, but they also are unable to bring charges against him. So when Barbara and Jeffrey first met, Jeffrey was a multi-millionaire and was the CEO of an energy company called Southern Electric International. Barbara's aunt, Jill Blatt, said that Barbara was completely smitten with him. She was young, beautiful, and in love, and she felt like he was her knight in shining armor. Eventually, though, after Barbara had her two children, Madison and Allie, things started to fall apart. Jeffrey was fired from Southern Electric International for allegedly making an illegal deal outside of the country. He eventually took that company to court and sued them for defamation of character, and he actually won, and he won a pretty large sum of money. But after this, he really changed, and in a lot of the interviews that Madison did with family members, they said that it was as if he felt he had something to prove after this, after he was fired. So he started to travel and work and live outside of the United States, leaving Barbara alone with the kids and basically abandoning her, and he stopped sending her money, basically stopped being a father and stopped being a husband. So that's when she filed for divorce. In 2012, 2 years after Barbara's murder, Jeffrey was accused of stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from his children's trust funds between 2008 and early 2010. And in one of the episodes, there's a scene where Madison finds a bunch of paperwork where Jeffrey was doing all of these shady dealings. I believe it was overseas, involving Swiss bank accounts and oil in the Middle East, was accused of taking the last of the money out of Allie's account just 2 weeks before Barbara was murdered, according to an affidavit obtained by the New Haven Register in 2012. He was charged in 2012 with both first-degree and second-degree larceny for stealing from 2 accounts belonging to his daughter. Jeffrey was extremely elusive when Madison was trying to interview him and talk to him about the murder. He wouldn't answer any questions really at all. But he did tell Madison that his mother was an alcoholic, which Madison didn't really know. And he also told Madison that she was a part of the gifting tables. And the gifting tables were basically kind of a multi-level marketing scheme or a pyramid scheme that involved gifting large sums of cash under the guise of being like a women's empowerment group. So Madison started to dig a little bit deeper, and he found that alcohol addiction ran in his mother's family, with 3 out of 4 of the daughters suffering from the illness, as well as their father. Barbara eventually recovered and ended up going to AA, but this was after Jeffrey had basically abandoned their family. So she was strapped for cash. She was newly sober. She wasn't able to really work while she was taking care of the kids. I believe Conway had moved into the house at some point to help take care of the children. And Conway had her own battles as well. She was a recovering alcoholic and I believe recovering from some kind of narcotic or opioid abuse as well. But this is where the gifting tables came in, because they both really needed money. And Jill Platt, Barbara's aunt by marriage, came to her about these gifting tables that she was a saw, and I think someone else saw this as well, but I'm not 100% sure. She also saw a man in her yard in broad daylight wearing a ski mask who looked into her window, and then when he realized that he had been seen, he ran away into the woods. And this was just weeks prior to her murder, so obviously someone was watching her. Jeffrey was trying to say that someone from the gifting tables, either someone who was in a position to get in a lot of trouble, or someone an angry husband of a woman who was a part of the gifting tables or something along those lines, had murdered Barbara. Now, maybe this was to take attention off of him, but you have to give it some credit. She was involved with large amounts of money and a criminal investigation. So, in another episode, we find out that Conway, Barbara's sister, who is also the one who found the body, believes that Allie, Madison's sister, had something to do with their mother's death. This was really difficult for Madison to kind of grapple with because he loved his aunt and he loved his sister, and he could kind of understand why Conway believed this, because Allie was a troubled teen. She had some severe depressive episodes. She went to live with her dad for a little while, then came back to live with her mom, but really seemed to hate both of them because of the divorce. She was very volatile with her mother, and Conway witnessed this because, like I said, Conway lived with her mom, with her sister for a little while. So Madison wanted to come up with an alibi for Allie, and he was finally able to place Allie at school based on the time that she signed into school on the day of her mother's murder. So in the documentary, you see this information unfold to Conway, and it's kind of heartbreaking because the relationship between Conway and Allie was kind of completely destroyed because Conway believed Allie killed her mother. But when Conway finds out that Allie couldn't have killed her mother based on the timeline, she kind of breaks down. And it's as if she was holding on to this explanation, and it gave her some kind of peace. But now that this explanation was kind of thrown out the window, she didn't really have anything to hold on to anymore. And it kind of reopened the wound for her. So there are all of these really human moments in this series, which is why I so highly recommend it. So throughout all of this investigation, also the police have seemingly been mishandling it. There's one example where Madison is able to get into his mother's old Facebook account and email, and he finds that there are a bunch of unread messages from people about the gifting tables, meaning that the police probably haven't seen these messages, and in my mind that means they didn't do a thorough investigation. So eventually he tries to get the police files from the police, because he's hired some investigators at this point as well, private investigators, and the police don't want to cooperate, but he files an appeal. And in the last episode, he's able to get 1,600 relevant documents, but then the series ends. So hopefully we will find out more of the pieces of the puzzle for what happened to Barbara. I hope they come out this was going to be in the public eye, and that these vulnerabilities that my family has trusted me with were going to be exposed, didn't enter the equation until the stage was realized. It's terrifying, and I think that's something that was really important for me, was naming and identifying the adverse effects of doing something like this in the documentary itself, because I just think that's one of the unique aspects of the point of view, and sort of realizing that what I wanted as a character in the story and as a person is to know what happened to my mom. But I think what I need, and my sister said so beautifully at the beginning of last episode, is peace. There's a double-edged sword in the fact that the episodes are released weekly. It's an amazing thing as someone who's created something, because the conversations extend week to week, and to see the effects that it has on the momentum that it causes is really beautiful. But it's also really challenging for both my aunts, my sister, and my family. So we've had a lot of conversations. They've seen the documentary. We had family screenings before we even sent it to the press. That was mandatory to me. I wanted everybody to see how they come across and have a conversation about it to prepare them for what it's going to be like when we release this thing. But one thing that surprised me, I remember the first message I got after the release of episode 1. Someone sent me this beautiful essay